All right.
Thank you everyone for coming. This is our final session for Symbiosis 4. How quickly the time has flown. And it's wonderful. Today we have Julie to round us off, and she's going to be sharing her take on Burgert's composition. So yay, Julie, take it away.
All right. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Make sure you can just let me know that you can see this full screen, Dorothy.
Not full screen. Oh yes, now full screen.
Okay, let me just go back here. Okay. All right. So my two of my pieces that are in Symbiosis used some of Burgert's techniques that he used in his compositions. So I thought it would be a good topic for my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Oh, here we go. It's not moving. So Hans Joachim, I learned that it's not Joachim, which is the Spanish way of pronouncing it, but the German way is Joachim Burgert. Was a German calligrapher, sculptor, and an educator. And in the bios that I found on him, they all say one of the most significant contributors to the calligraphic world. And I didn't discover Burgert until I took a class with, well, it would have been with Thomas Ingmeyer. Brody, I had studied with Brody Neuenschwander in 2007. I went to Bruges, but I don't recall him mentioning Burgert, but we certainly did the stuff that Burgert did. And it wasn't until I met Thomas Ingmeyer in Chicago where I heard that name, and then I started looking him up. And Alicia knows Burgert's work very well too. She actually has a few of his books, the Ludus Scribendi that you're going to see cited here. And she has shared with me some of the images that you're going to see and hear today. So thank you, Alicia. We're both huge fans of his work. And he's also been an influence to many of the contemporary calligraphers that we all know. And I've listed some here: Thomas Ingmeyer and Ewan Clayton, Brody and Mike Gold and Denise Locke, who's from France, as well as many, I'm sure, that I don't know. The reason I put these 5 in here, because they have been kind of the direct influences on me with this type of expression. So he also founded the Berlin Calligraphy Collection, which is now at the Akademie der Kunst. I don't know how to pronounce it in German. I've put the website here if you want to look things up. The Academy is, it was founded in 1696, and it is an Academy of Arts in Berlin. It's one of the oldest European cultural institutes. It is an international community of artists and currently has a total of 430 members in 6 sections of fine arts, architecture, music, literature, performing arts, film, and media art. So I actually wasn't even aware of the Academy, but I knew about the collection. By the way, Mike Gold is now one of the, they call them correspondents. So Mike Gold has taken Thomas Ingmeyer's place. Thomas Ingmeyer, Denise Locke, Werner Schneider, and Benno Aulman, I believe is how you say his name. They were appointed by Burgert to carry on the collection. And so they are kind of like the curators of the collection, and they add pieces to it every few years. I believe Andrea might even be in that collection. So yes, so it's a very interesting concept. They collect calligraphy from Latin script variations, contemporary practical approach to writing. So you might want to look it up. It's a pretty interesting institution. And he's also the author of a book called The Calligraphic Line. And that is an important book for me, as well as a lot of other calligraphers. Brody Neuenschwander actually translated it from German to English. And it's available on, I believe it's on Amazon. It's also at John Neal. And it is his thoughts on design, on lettering, on the writing. So I highly recommend that. So what is the calligraphic line? He doesn't, I kind of scoured the book for a formal definition, but line, I come from a graphic design background. Line is a basic element in design. And as artists and calligraphers, we use line all the time. Lines can be used to lead our eyes around the page. They can be energetic or calm, happy or sad. They can create textures. When lines are arranged into forms to which we ascribe meaning, we call those letters. And lines can also be compositions. And this is where Burgert starts to veer off into the calligraphic line concept. Line as composition. And you'll see here, there's this little line that's bouncing around here. This is an exercise I'm going to show you in just a bit. I'm actually going to switch over to my desktop. I learned this in a Ewing Clayton class when he was teaching us things that he had learned from Burgert. And this idea of this line is what I'm going to be sharing later, but line as composition. Burgert calls a line of calligraphy a reduced composition. And what is composition? So the graphic design definition is it's an organizing and combining of visual elements, which we use images, we use text, color, size, contrast, all of that. Those are the elements of design that are put together to create a harmonious look. And you can see here some of the principles that we use to do that. Contrast, leading lines. So we use the line to direct the viewer's eye. Artists do this too. It's not just graphic designers. Balance, making sure things have balance. It doesn't mean that they're symmetrical. It just means that there's a cohesion there. Complementary elements, elements that complement each other. And then the awareness of the white or negative space is part of your design. And that's a huge thing for me as a calligrapher and as an artist. I'm constantly, I kind of like the Japanese view of negative space. And so this particular one is important to me with my calligraphy, my expressive calligraphy. Burgert says the line should and must contain all elements of the composition, but at the same time must adjust to the burden of letter quantity. So he recognizes that calligraphy is it's not art. We're not just doing abstract or putting color on a page and making a painting. We're actually using things that need to sometimes communicate. Now we know that we can do abstract calligraphy, that it doesn't always have to be legible, but we do have the burden of the letter, the burden of, he calls it the letter quantity, but we have the burden of the letter. So as calligraphers, we need to always kind of wrestle with how far can we push that calligraphic line until it becomes what? Illegible, until it becomes, ventures into the realm of fine art. That's this constant discussion that goes on in the calligraphy world. I know Thomas Ingmeyer has talked about it. Brody Neuenschwander has talked about it. When do we cross over from calligraphy into fine art? And that's even Dorothy, that's what she wants to promote, and we need to figure out. This quote, I found this really kind of funny at the end, but I love this quote. The line of writing as reduced composition must be earnestly examined. So he's very serious about the line of writing. Now, that doesn't necessarily always have to mean expressive line or these crazy compositions that he does, but it means at any time that we're writing, even in our formal work, we must earnestly examine the line and then the next line that responds to the first line and so on. It demands our total skill, our resolve, and we have to learn to see differently. We look to see form, and that's where it's important to understand the concept of the negative space or the white space. We need to make sure we understand form because, for example, in italic, our form that we're concerned about is that oval in the letter O, is the arches, the Gothic arches that are, so familiar in calligraphy, in italic. So form is very important as part of the line. We are searching for a rich and rhythmic calligraphy, whether it's in formal writing or in informal. We want there to be a rhythm there. There should be a rhythm that leads your viewer through the piece. And then this has a potential to show feeling. And it's a great opportunity. It says here now, I thought this was cute, in this high-tech age. So this quote was taken from the Calligraphic Line. The first printing was 1989 and the second was 2002. So I kind of had to laugh. The high-tech age, think about where we're at now. And it's very relevant. And I think there's been, since COVID, there's been a resurgence of interest in the arts. And so as calligraphers, I think we need to jump on that. But I love the rest of this quote here. Calligraphy preserves our humanity. It is the absolute antidote to the deadening effect of so much technology. Calligraphy will save us, which I thought was a little of an exaggeration, but I love that. I love the end of this quote. It just made me chuckle, and it's true. So here, I'm going to share some of Burgert's compositions, and then I'm going to go into mine. But these are quotes from his book. The artist thinks in form, the calligrapher thinks in graphic form. And graphic in this case means the art of writing, to graph something is to write something. Thinking in the rhythm of the line of writing and in the way the lines of writing are related to one another. So you can see here, he's got these lines, but they're interacting with each other in quite unusual ways, actually, but very thoughtfully interacting. You can see where his descenders are coming down, and it's not a mess. It's very thoughtful, the placement of where the ascenders occur into the negative space that you see here. Can you see my cursor as I'm going around here? Just want to make sure you can see what I'm pointing out. Okay. So very thoughtfully placed, but each line is responding to the one above it in a very well thought out way. Even if it looks like it's just a bunch of scribbles, it's not. Very well thought out. The artist, it's the same quote, but the next part of it is thinking in the placement of individual forms, massed forms, and the overall shape of the composition. Burgert is very, very aware and very strong opinions about the shape of the calligraphic composition, and I'm kind of following this pattern here. I don't speak German, so I don't know what this says. There is one where he uses kind of a teardrop shape, and it is about something, the rivers or crying or something, I can't remember. But this, obviously, there's a reason for this kind of flowing pattern, and you can see the outside outline of the composition. So he was very aware of what he was doing to evoke emotion or to evoke a feeling with his compositions. So here we have the expressive quality of the forms is to be found in the atmosphere. This is what I'm talking about, that they create. And this is the result of the manner of their execution. This is something I just picked this as soft line. It's kind of gentle and a little bit playful and not very noisy, just kind of playfully soft and quiet, I think. And then there's this, now the roughly splattered shape he does mention. This is like the only thing I could find to like roughly splattered in some of his work that I was able to find online, as well as in the books that I have access to. But again, this is, could be considered messy. A lot of his stuff, it looked like it was very exploratory. And I know some of it was done in classes. So exercises that he's doing to explain some of his concepts. Touching lines, how things, do you have no line spacing where things are kind of crashing into each other? And nervously drawn lines. All of these evoke something. They're all emoting something. So these kind of shaky lines. And again, I don't speak German, so I don't know what this says. And then strongly contrasting positive and negative areas. These are the expressive tools we use to create meaning within our graphic works. Okay. So why Burgert for me? My background in graphic design is a huge part of my calligraphic work because I think constantly thinking about the placement of elements on a page, as I mentioned earlier. Burgert says that calligraphy is the how of graphic two-dimensional invention. Of central importance is the question of place or position on the page, where the individual forms are shaped and the formal themes developed, where the position of the forms is determined and how this affects neighboring forms. So we know this as calligraphers. We're constantly having to make decisions about the next letter form. Or if we have a descender on a line above, how is that descender going to affect the line below it with the ascenders? So we are constantly making those decisions. But in expressive work, things get a little bit different. And in my case, a lot of my expressive work is done spontaneously. I throw away a lot of stuff. I, sometimes work on good paper, because what happens if I come up with something that really looks good and I did it on bad paper? So I'm always playing and experimenting. And when I do that, I'm thinking of the next letter or the word and where it should go. Burgert's compositions have helped me in this journey, as have some of the calligraphers I've studied with, like Yves Leterme and Brody. Yves is very, very much part of the way I think now. I took his expressive writing classes, many of them, many years ago. And it's all about, okay, now where do I throw this stroke? And how do I make this ascender or this descender? And so Yves was very influential in the way that I write, in the more expressive ways that I write. And why expressive calligraphy? I was trained, as all of us were, in the formal when I first started, and gradually kind of evolved into this more expressive. Number one, there was a physiological reason for me. I had a whiplash. I was involved in a car accident many years ago and had whiplash to the point where, I had to go to the hospital and, physical therapy and all that. And at the time, the doctor said that this would probably rear its ugly head when you get older. And, unless you have neck surgery, which didn't sound good because they fuse your neck, you're going to have to learn how to deal with the pain of, having this happen to your neck and your spine. And he was right. And so what happens for me is when I work on anything tight or any kind of repetition, like, people who do wedding envelopes for a living, for me, that causes me pain. And I've tried all the ergonomic chairs and, the stretching and all of that. And for me, it's just when I work tight or small or for long periods of time on formal things, I am in pain. And so what has happened is I've gradually moved into where I can move my whole arm. So when I move my whole arm and my shoulder, I am not in pain. I feel really good. So I think for me, that was one reason. The second reason is I do get very bored with repetition. I've learned that about myself. And I don't like repetitive things. So I'm not a copperplate person. Like, why do all the loops have to look the same? That's always the question I ask myself. But I understand the reason for it, because that's a look to something. So I'm not knocking it. For me, it's just not my thing. I get bored with that. I always want to think, I want to see what this loop looks like if it goes this way. And then the most importantly is that there's a hunger to express my emotions in a graphic way. It's like, how can I express myself with my calligraphy? I love to explore using my calligraphic tools in new ways. That's something I love to do. I love taking workshops with people who challenge me to do new things. And one of the things I always say is I'm not a good dancer, but I often say that my pen is my way to express the moves I would so love to make with my body. And so that is what I do. I feel like I can move, and, in my head, I feel like I'm dancing when I'm writing on the page. And the funny thing is that a long time ago, someone said to me, so can you come and teach us a class on those lively letters that you make? And I looked at her like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. And that was the beginning of me teaching for people. Was this group asked me to come and teach for them because they wanted to learn my lively letters. And that was my first class. But I had to figure out what that meant and had to analyze what that meant. And then ask them questions so that I can figure out, what am I teaching? I'm not exactly sure. So out of that has come quite a few classes now of this more lively stuff that I do. And also because I can get marks like these. I love it when I use my handwritten pen, which is Brody Neuenschwander's pen, and on rough paper, and I get splatters and lots of energy. And this is an Italian quote that says, "Niente senza gioia," nothing without joy. So don't do anything without joy, everything with joy. Okay. And because I love the concept of Burgert's calligraphic line, it continually challenges me to think of how I move through a line of writing. So I got that little stop sign here to remind me to pause here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the slideshow for a few minutes, and I'm going to go to my tabletop and just share a little demo with you on this idea of the calligraphic line. So one of the things that I learned in Ewing Clayton's class, and this was something he learned from Burgert, is this idea of no repetition in a line. So what Burgert was forcing them to do was to draw a line with, I believe it's like 7 points. And seven segments or 8 segments that don't repeat each other. So, for example, if you start out and I do a line like this, I want to look at the width of this line. I want to look that it's a convex curve. It's about approximately 2.5 inches long. It's swinging up. What's the opposite of that? Don't repeat that. So now I've got point number 1, point number 2, and I might go straight down and very short. Point number 3. Now, my next segment, I should say, needs to do something very different. And it's kind of hard to think about what that might be. Let's see, if I go up, that could be segment number 3. Sorry, I'm off the page. There's point number 4. And then I could come down and maybe a long stretch, because I have this width or this length of stretch there and this length. They're very similar, so I don't want that anymore. So let's see, I do something like that. Okay. So that's 5. And now maybe I do just a little thing like that. And maybe, let's see, okay. So that is line number 1. Line number 2 would respond to this. That's where it starts to get challenging. So when you start with line number 2 and you need to respond to line number 1, I know that I'm not going to do a stretch right below this because that would be too close to that. So I have a hump over here. I don't have any humps over here. I could do something like this, going down a little shorter. And then maybe I do, see, I don't want to mimic that too much. Let's see, I could do, I'm hesitant to stretch another stroke right here. I might stretch something in here. Let's see. Maybe we just go little. And we'll come down. Okay. And then I'm going to stretch maybe straight. Now see, this is a diagonal here. Now I did a diagonal there. So this, you can see where this is kind of the heart. I did not practice this ahead of time. I did practice some lines, but not this particular one, this sequence, because I really wanted it to be spontaneous so you can see the thought process behind this. So I'm not cheating or anything. I didn't do this ahead of time. Okay, so then let's see if we do something like that. I don't have really anything that length, and I'm going up with it. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we can come down maybe, and if I go diagonal, I've got a diagonal here. And let's see, maybe we go like this. And feel like it would be good to do something like, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now you've got these 2 loops. Are loops permitted? You know what? I don't know. The examples that Ewan shared with us of Burgert's did not have loops, but I don't know, maybe. Yeah. Because some of your letter forms. So let me go ahead here. This is for the idea of doing this with letters. So some of your letters might have loops if you want to add them. A lot of Burgert stuff doesn't always do that, but there are a few of his pieces that, like the one I mentioned about the teardrops, I think he does do some loops on that one. So yeah, you can try loops. You can see what the concept is trying not to repeat any segments, and then having your lines respond to each other as they move down the page. And you can start to see this is where some of his compositions, if you're familiar with them, they start to look like this. So now what do we do with this? So if I were going to just take one of these lines, let's just say this one here, I don't know, I like the word meander because that's kind of what I'm doing here. I could take this and make this my M. So kind of mimicking this shape here. Could my E do this? And then, yeah, I don't know what I would do with the A, like this shape here, but we could make that. And they don't have to connect. The lines don't have to connect. But maybe I make the bowl of my A something like this. And then what kind of an N? I'm going to just do an N like this. That kind of looks like an R. Let's just round that a little bit. And then my D, well, here's where I might go a little bit smaller than that bowl because I don't want it to mimic that seam. And then I have to get out here, but I think I might do this with my D, something like that. Just kind of looking at this curve here. And then my next E, I've already done this with this E. But let's make this one a little bit more like this. And not the same length as this one or this, because don't forget I need to get in my R in there. And then my R could be whatever. I might do something like that, making a smaller bowl yet. So I've got this size bowl, and now a really tiny one. And then maybe just throw this out like that. All right, so it's very weird looking, but you can see this is where you do this exercise with the line, and then you start thinking about, well, how do I make these crazy compositions, and how do I make them make sense? As you're going to see when I share a little bit more of my work, and even Burgert's work, sometimes it's hard to read, but the idea of this meandering across the page it's just a fun concept to me. And so, even moving like this, what would this letter be here? Like this A, I'm looking at that first one that I did. My A could do something like this. That's this move right here. And then I go up to whatever my next letter is, could do something like that. And maybe that is, what's the word? I don't know. An N, because this is how it goes. Okay. So that's this line right here. And then we would do The next one was the hump. So let's say the person's name is Anna. Could be something like that. And that's all from this. Let me fold this over here like this. Ah, my paper's so big, I'm writing so big you can't get it on there. So there's Anna, and there's the line that I'm responding to down below. Okay. So anyway, that's my brief little demonstration, and I'm gonna go ahead and stop now. And go back to my share. Okay. Let me hide these. And do you see now full screen again?
Yes.
All right. So let me just make sure I didn't miss any. Yeah. Okay. So coming back to this piece very quickly, this is something I used. Some of Burgert has this handwriting style called a Kim. Akeem or Kim. And it's my take on it. I like playing with it and trying it. And this was, these lines are responding to one another. You can see as I'm moving down the page, kind of in a Burgert sort of composition. So just thinking about, where do you throw, I can get away with throwing my ascender up here because I have nothing up here to deal with. It's just empty space. But then I can't do that as I move my way down. So I have to think about, like, even the word story right here. How is that Y going to interact as it comes down? Sometimes what I'll do is I won't do the descenders until I solve the problem of the line below. Then I'll bring them down. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do them right away, and then sometimes I don't. So yeah. And this was just done very quickly. This is, I didn't go through and like move things around or anything. So there are, things I would change on this piece, but I like to show it because it's something that just kind of happens spontaneously. So the next part of my talk here is, this is one of the pieces, this is a part of one of my pieces that I did for the show. My piece, the full piece was called Motherhood, and I'm looking back at Burgert's definition of nervously drawn lines. And this is, my son moved away after he graduated from high school. He didn't go to college right away, and he moved away, far away, almost 2,000 miles to the mountains. And I didn't have the normal break-in period of child going off to college and then coming home. So he went away, and we didn't see him until we went to visit him, So it's like every time he leaves, he's 22 years old now, so but it doesn't matter. I have one child, and it's every time he leaves, I feel like my heart breaks, and then it kind of mends itself, and then the whole process starts again. And so this is what I was trying to convey in the emotion of like my heart breaking, and then, okay, it's got to repair itself, but it's not quite fully repaired. And then the whole process happens again. And I just felt like Burgert, I gravitated toward his compositions for this piece because I just really wanted it to be filled with emotion. This is a part of that piece. This is calmer because these are the words that I associate with motherhood. And I loved, some of his compositions where he just moved letters around. But what I was inspired by was when I was at the conference. I actually did this at the calligraphy conference in June in Brody Neuenschwander's class. This was not one of our exercises. Well, he had an exercise where you make like they look like Chinese characters, the little squares or rectangles. And I kind of veered off away from that because I had seen some of Father Katich's sketchbooks in the archives at St. Ambrose University while I was there. And he had these beautifully done, very abstract, almost Picasso-like drawings. And so I kind of wanted to do that. And this is what he did. He did a lot of shading. But then I kind of made him look kind of cubist, kind of Burgert-ish, and use that shading. So I really wanted that to be a part of the piece because these are words that were very important to me for the piece. And then this is the full piece. This is the code that I came up with. Brody was doing an alphabetic code class there. So we came up with this secret code. These are letters, if you know the code. But I have 3 different graphic treatments for this because this represents different parts of the journey. This is just what it is. You know, I created life. Well, I didn't, God did, but inside me. It's been an adventure. There was this birth experience that was amazing, motherhood in itself. I felt like they just needed, the words just needed this kind of calm kind of treatment. And then, of course, the heartbreaking. And then this is this kind of playful way to treat, this is my name and my son's name, basically, here. So kind of learning all of these different, from all these different inspirations, I wanted to incorporate it into this piece. And then this is a piece that I did also for the exhibit. This is the Fibonacci sequence, if you're familiar with that mathematical term, which exists in all of the universe, intelligent design. And these are my wanderings. And but I felt like Burgert's, this is Burgert's composition here. This is not a Burgert thing, but this piece on the right, or this side of it, is. And I really wanted that longing and the wondering, sorry, and my questions and being drawn in. So I felt like that was very, for me, that's the way I wanted to express that. And then this is very expressive. This was actually a commissioned piece. There's gold leaf that comes tumbling down through here. It's meant to be the spray off of like a waterfall. So these letters were meant to tumble down the page. This was done, I'm not saying this was done spontaneously. It was done many times on good paper, spontaneously, but planned out. I had to get the right movement. So it took me a while. I think I had about 4 of these before I felt like this was the one. But you can see where I'm throwing those strokes, those movements, that expressive movement. And then I'm trying to kind of tuck my words in a la Burgert. Also, this was a commission and it had to be legible. So legible, but yet expressive. And that's what I was trying to go for there. And this is just me having fun with a kind of Burgert-ish type of thing with the Brody pen. It gets so crazy. I love nature. I love being inspired by nature. I see letters everywhere, and I have to be very careful when I'm either driving or riding a bike up behind my husband, because I look at letters, I see them in the trees, and then I crash on my bike. Not in my car, on my bike. But this, I took a picture of this wooden beam in Arizona. This is a almost petrified beam. It was in an adobe, an old Indian adobe, ancient Indian adobe in Arizona. And these are the bug meanderings through the wood. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have about 6 pictures of these. And in Ewan's class, when I was online with him, he was suggesting that maybe we use something of inspiration, and I used this. And I did this kind of quick little drawing over here to the right. And then I turned it on its side. And excuse me, it became, there's this poem by Marilyn McIntyre, a poet I like. It's called Where Light Survives. And this is one of her phrases, where small creatures turn. And I felt like it was very appropriate, the bug meanderings, to become this. Again, very Burgert-ish. I wanted to kind of follow that drawing. This was at the Grand Canyon. It was a boulder on the side of the walkway around the canyon. And I loved the mark in here. So I kind of did this little sketch here. So that's just the pattern I see in the granite. And then I did this, the earth keeps her secrets. And so again, using the spikiness of this line quality, the calligraphic line, to do something like this. And you can see where I'm kind of stretching and meandering around the page. And then another phrase from that same poem, light comes into dark places. I kind of have this idea that I'd like to do this poem in all these different, like each stanza of the poem in like a different style, because I actually have quite a few of them. But this was an exercise I did based on that poem as well. Contrast, lots of contrast here. And then sands blown by a wind. I live near the Indiana Dunes on Lake Michigan, so we see this a lot. And then here's one of Burgert's compositions, and this is a demo I did in one of my classes. Just took a quick little quote and turned it into something that was inspired by this. So I love doing these. I do them a lot. And I'm always trying to explore different ways to make things on a page. This is another quote. This is by Julia Cameron, and I just think it's fun. Again, kind of connecting the letters, not always, touching, very little line space. This was a piece I did as a gift for a friend who's an artist. This is a Picasso quote: "Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life." And then Burgert was also inspired by Arabic and foreign alphabets. And so I started looking for my own foreign alphabets, and I found these Georgian letters, ancient Georgian script. And I should have put a photo of the actual Georgian, but this was inspired by that, and I did it kind of a la Burgert. And this is just a quick demo piece in a workshop that I was teaching. The same thing here, just a workshop demo. O Frabjiste Kalukale. It's a line from the Jabberwocky. And then these are some very small little compositions, just being playful and keep calm and carry on. And this was done as an ode to Paul Klee. They're taking your line for a walk. These are actually two quotes by Paul Klee. As one starts down here, upside down, and goes this way. And then this one starts here and meanders this way, and they intersect here in the middle. And this is the continuous line. Burgert does some, but he's not, I haven't seen a lot of his compositions doing this. But the concept of continuous line is really interesting to me, and it kind of goes along with the calligraphic line for me. So it's very difficult to make, unless you're writing cursive, which I'm not doing. I'm actually doing printed letters, Roman letters, trying to get in and out of a letter form in an interesting way. And there are a few people that do this. I know Mike Gold does this, Yukimi does this. I do it. It's just an exercise I learned when I was in art school of continuous line. And I just thought one day I'd like to try it with letters. And so here we are. And I continue to try it with letters. It's fun. And these are a couple more of my Akeem pieces. These were actually done, this was done on paper, the Risen and these marks, but this was all put together digitally in Photoshop. I did this for Easter one year. And down here, you can't barely see it, but there is a mark. So it's kind of like, this is the darkness in the grave, and then the light bursts forth on the right side. And then this was also a piece I did for Easter, the chaos. But I wanted to show this because of not just the line quality of what I'm doing down here, the stretching, but also this line quality here, culminating down to this. And then this piece is it's a Thomas Merton quote: "The whole world is charged with the glory of God, and I feel fire and music under my feet." So the whole Burgert, Akeem, whatever you want to call it, the stretching of the letters just seemed appropriate for this. And what I wanted to do was make these, the lettering was done over this Sumi wash background with just a monoline. I think I just used the tip of Brody's pen. And then later came in to add this kind of musical feel, this thick bars to make it look more like notes. And then the fire is represented by this very shimmery, in person, you can kind of see it over here, gold ink. And this piece was actually purchased by the Harrison Collection in San Francisco. And then this piece is actually inspired by something I saw in a Denise Locke book, who was inspired by Burgert. And this is my secret language, I call it. It's just a Semitic writing, which means gibberish writing. And I sometimes write like this when I want to express emotions that I can't put into words. And now it exists in 3 different formats. So I actually took this piece and vectorized it, turned it into this. I sent this out to a place called Suncut Send here in the United States. And this exists as it's about 2.5 feet wide, copper piece that hangs on the wall. And then one of my students that was taking a class with me online is a jewelry designer. And she wanted to collaborate. Alicia, collaboration. she collaborated and she made this piece from my work and gave it to me as a gift, which was very generous. And her name is Nancy Bonema. And I love it. And it's very small. It's about 7 inches wide. So yeah, that was kind of fun. So I have this as 3 different formats. And that's my presentation. So I wanted to thank my mentees, Inez and Dashin, and my fellow mentors, Gabriella and Eleanor and Andrea, and to the amazing Dorothy, who, I mean, I'm just amazed by your energy, your patience, your vision, your patience with me and all my emails and questions, and your generosity, because you truly have a generous heart and joy exudes from you. And it has truly been my honor to be a part of this journey with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's awesome. What an awesome, awesome presentation. Thank you so much, Julie.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Oh, I went a little long. Oh, sorry.
Not at all. Hey, everybody, I can see you now. Comments, questions? Feel free to unmute and just jump in.
When I did this by myself, I was too short.
I just want to say something to Julie. You know, after I've learned all the hands, the traditional hands, or not learned, but I took several workshops, you know, italics, capitals, everything. That's the way I started. The first workshop I talk about how to express yourself or how to go a little, you know, free on your hand was yours.
Oh, I remember. I didn't know that was your first one.
It was the first one where I, you know,
impressive.
breaking things. And I'm finding this is the first time I blend colors, for example. You know, I have a very technical background. So that was the first one. And it was amazing what things I could done and I didn't know. And that was that was you, you know. And also like this sometimes we think like expressive it's just a splash, you know, or something like it's more splashy, more like in your face expression. But you know, Cubism could be very expressive too. It's just it's a different language. So what I learned with you, and you know, after when I discovered Burgert, I was also like amazed. I was really drawn to learn from him, and I knew him through my professor, John Nielsen, who was also a direct student from Burgert.
Cool. Yeah.
They both were John also is a musician. And he was telling me that most of the rhythms that you find in Burgert's jobs came from music, you know, came from the study of different rhythms. And Burgert has a CD, a recording that is just music and it's letters that, you know, it's German. I have no idea what this says. But if you hear the music, you also kind of visualize things when you see his work. And I just wanted to mention that expressionist, I discovered myself when I see Burgert and when I learned with you that expression could be so different also. Could be stylish different. Your kind of expression could be so different from the person you have in your side. And both could be extremely intense, but totally opposites visually. And sometimes we categorize, you know, expression with a splash because in our calligraphy studies, you know, we learn structures, and then when we try to think on expression, it has full color and full splashes. But expression is, you know, just a line also treated in a different way, as you showed right now. It could be a simple thing also. So I just wanted to say thank you because I started seeing things different when I started learning with you that years ago.
We need to collaborate.
10%, 100%, 1000%, anything you want.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you. Anyone else wants to jump in? Andrea?
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead, Ines.
Me? Okay. No, I just want to thank Julie because it's so beautiful what you do. And before starting the program, the mentoring program, I didn't know about you. And when Dorothy just said that we would be in your group, I searched for your work, and it was so complete and so different, and I just thought that you could do anything, and I was so amazed by it because you can cover a whole range of lines and expression and colors and styles. So you're so wonderful and complete. Yeah, you're a
Well, I
great
can't do
artist.
points in pen with repetitive loops.
You can, you can.
Well, I can. I'll be in pain, but I don't prefer
So
to.
thank you very, very much.
Yeah,
You're
thanks,
just
guys. Thanks.
wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Are we good?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I can stop the recording here. Is that good? Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Julie. That was an awesome presentation.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
everyone.
We're all walking the line right now, Julie.